Winston Churchill said the destiny of man is not measured by material computations. When great forces are on the move in the world, we learn we're spirits, not animals. And he said there's something going on in time and space and beyond time and space, which, whether we like it or not, spells duty. You and I have a rendezvous with
the professor.
Wrestling.
Hey there, wrestling fans. This is your ringside pitchman, Donnie Jr., and I am a guest at this time with the men that want to be Taco Bell famous, the professors of wrestling.
I think that is the most professional introduction we've ever had before. So, as you can see, Donnie Harris Jr., ring announcer extraordinaire in South Georgia and North Florida, maybe?
Yep.
Is sitting down with us for this week's or this time's interview. So, Donnie, thank you for taking time and doing this.
No problem, man. Glad to be here.
We messaged you a while back, and we've been talking about this for several months, and everybody's got a little bit more time right now, or the illusion we have a little bit more time right now. So
yeah, everyone has a little bit more time right now.
So let's just get right into the meat and potatoes here. What got you into wrestling to begin with?
Well, I started watching wrestling summer of 2000. My cousin Daniel Moats was a little bit older. He'd record on VHS, if anybody remembers that, the old ECW tapes.
Right.
And I mean, I knew what wrestling was, but I'd never seen it produced like that. You know, the first match I ever saw was Mike Awesome versus, I believe his name was Masato Tanaka. And, you know, and they're beating the crap out of each other, and he takes him, power bombs him through a table. My mind is blown. And, you know, then I start watching WWE because, you know, we got that on our channel.
Right.
And I see The Rock, and he comes out, and he's got the glasses. He's not wearing the title. He's carrying it like a strap, throws it up like that. And I'm just entrapped. And I've just been a wrestling fan ever since.
So how old were you when that?
I was, I think, 10 when that happened. 10, maybe a little bit older.
And then you get into it, did you want to be a part of that?
Not at first. To me, it was just kind of like, I mean, it was just something you watched.
Right.
It was fun. You know, every Monday night. It just kind of gave you something to look forward to get through the days. Now, I didn't get the bug until about late 2017, 2018. I was in a position financially where, you know, I could pursue this.
Right.
So I mean, you know, training and all that, it costs money, and you know, you have to juxtapose your training with your work schedule. I mean, it's like going to college. So into 2017 into 2018, I was finally at a position where, like, hey, you know, if I want, I can do this, and I'm like, well, why not? And so I did.
Of all the aspects of wrestling, what geared you towards the ring announcing?
Well, I'd always kind of been a salesman at heart, and in my mind, a ring announcer is kind of like that used car salesman. He's like, "Come on in, folks, check out what I got to sell." Only, you know, instead of cars, you're selling professional wrestling action.
Right.
So that's kind of the mentality that I have. Like when I walk into the ring, it's like, "Hey, folks, come on in. We got some great wrestling action here for you. We got pile driving, we got high flying." You know, so that was just the aspect. I was like, this is something I can do.
So it's almost the barking aspect when you think about the carny element.
Yes, exactly.
And all that, the history of the carny aspects within the wrestling in there. What other jobs have you done when it comes to wrestling, refereeing, so on and so forth?
Obviously, I've done ring announcing. I also do interviews because, you know, one of the legends that I look up to, even though he was a little before my time, is Mean Gene Okerlund. So, you know, I always like doing the interviews. And, you know, when the camera's not rolling, you know, I'll help set up, put down, you know, just whatever, you know, I can do to help get the show going.
We've talked to several types of people so far in doing these interviews, you know, from refereeing to producing to managing and all that. And one thing is people don't understand the role each one of these participants within an event happening. And you've kind of touched on it a little bit, but what do you think are some of the key roles that go into being a ring announcer?
Well, you have to have the right mindset. You have to be able to develop your voice, and you have to be able to connect. You can't just walk out and say, coming to the ring weighing 200 pounds, such and such, such and such.
Right.
You have to kind of like, it's hard for me to describe, but I've just used the term like you have to be that barker. You have to come out and you have to have that energy. Hey folks, come on in. Welcome to this wrestling action. Coming to the ring. You have to be able to raise your voice and your persona a little bit higher in order to do that. You also need to be prepared. One thing I like to do is I always like to bring in my own note cards, even if the promoter has cards, because it's a trick I learned in school. If you write stuff down, you memorize it better. And you should always have those note cards ready, whether you're holding them out or tucked into your jacket pocket, because you don't want to get a wrestler's name or weight wrong. I mean, that's career suicide.
Right.
So, part of it's the show, but a lot of it's just the preparation, being ready.
So how much prep before a regular house show of any of the local promotions out there? How much prep do you put in there?
Well, you want to get there. You want to get there probably an hour and a half early, because you've got to get your suit on, make sure your hair's straight. Then you have to get your note cards out. Then you have to go to each wrestler, say, hey, what is your current weight? Where's your hometown? Do you have a nickname? Are you holding any titles now?
Right.
You have to make sure you have all that before the show starts, because when the show starts, you're not going to have time, because you have the match and you have to stand by the ring, and you can't leave to go to the back to double check your note cards, because what if the match is over while you're gone? Who's going to announce it?
Right. Right on. When you're watching, let me backstep here. When I'm watching a musician play or wrestling, or sometimes I'm looking for certain elements within it, or I'm hyper focused on what the drummer's doing or the bass player. As a ring announcer, do you focus on what a ring announcer's doing? And if you do that, what do you watch for when you see other ring announcers?
I kind of watch their movement and how they and listen to how they enunciate certain words. Mm-hmm. Do they if a name has one syllable then followed by two syllables? So do they just go? We'll use J Too Strong for example.
Okay.
Do they just go J Too Strong, or do they hold on to that J Too Strong? You kind of get a little rhythm going in your mind. You kind of count 1, 2, then you switch to the next name, 1, 2, 3. So those are things that I look for. And also are they stationary? Are they staying in the ring? Or are they moving around when they're saying it? Because you guys have seen me. I walk around all the time.
How do you make it unique to you, Donnie Harris versus? I always think Michael Buffer is probably one of the ring announcers that pops into my head.
Oh yeah. You kind of use Michael Buffer as that template. Okay, he does it this way, so I start that way. That's your comfort zone, and then you start doing things a little different. So you listen to a ring announcer that you like, and then you just kind of start branching out and trying different things, because what he does works, but you can't keep doing what he works because that's his shtick.
Right. So
your first 2 times you kind of play it safe, and then you deviate into what makes you you. My habit is I love to stretch out the first name, like with Jay or Proc the Croc Johnston. I love stretching out names. I think the longest I've gone is a 20-second for something like that. So that's kind of how I do it.
So that's your version of goal.
Yeah.
From the Mexican soccer announcer.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned earlier that you did training. You went to the Funkin' Dojo.
Yes, sir.
How was that experience, and why did you pick the Funkin' Dojo to do your training?
Well, the experience was an education. All I can say about Dory Funk Jr. is he is a national treasure. That man is just one of the nicest, greatest people you ever hope to meet, not just in the wrestling business, but in life. I chose the Funkin' Conservatory because it was the closest school.
Okay.
I was in Lake City, Florida at the time, and they're down in Ocala, so it's about an hour and a half drive. And distance is obviously a key factor. You hear stories about how some people will drive 4 hours out of their way to go to wrestling school. I lucked out. They were just, little drive down the road. So, I came in, and they put me to work being the ring announcer for Bang TV, which is their show that they do for their students, and just went from there.
Did you try any other elements? Do they have you try all the aspects you kind of know?
There was talk about doing refereeing and even like talk about being a manager. But for me, I have a medical condition that getting bumped and all that's just not a good idea.
So your bump card is full.
Yeah, my bump card is pretty much full. I mean, you could chance it if you wanted to, but why bother? So, being an interview and a ring announcer, you can contribute without having to get physical.
Okay. Is there anything you learned? I mean, what's the most significant thing you learned from your training?
Respect is the greatest currency in this business. It's probably the single most greatest lesson that Dory Funk Jr. taught me. Respect. Just walking in, shaking a man's hand, whether he's at the opening act or at the end, treating everyone like they're a star. Because, as a ring announcer, you have to have a relationship with every wrestler in that ring because you contribute to them, to every single one of them. So, that's what you need to do, just respect.
So I would ask you next, I don't know, that maybe it seems ridiculous after what you said there. Just as a ring announcer, why go to the wrestling training? 'Cause you're just announcing.
Well, I'll go back to the salesman example I used earlier. A good salesman needs to know his product. Now, anyone with a little bit of public speaking experience probably could come in and give it a try, but they don't know the product. You need to know the product if you're going to be passionate about it and sell it to the audience. I learned things at Dory's that, I wouldn't have learned had I just called up some promoter and said, hey, let me give it a shot. And also, going to wrestling school, you learn how to be a ring announcer in that environment because being a ring announcer for professional wrestling is going to be different than, doing MMA or boxing.
Okay. Are there any elements within, as a ring announcer that separate someone being a mediocre ring announcer, good media, announcer, or a great announcer? Or is it sometimes just right place, right time?
It's right place, right time, and if you had to ask me, it's passion. I'm just pure and simple. It's passion, I love this business. It's been with me my entire life, and I take great pride in knowing that, I'm now a part of it in my own way. So really, it's just passion.
I'm just taking it all in right now because I'm thinking like, does it frustrate you when you see people just kind of going? I imagine it is. Kind of maybe this is a rhetorical question in a lot of sense.
It does. When people just for me, especially on the indie scene, it's like, if you don't like this, why are you here? Pretty much, because someone who wants your spot should have it. If you're just here to do it and you're not passionate about it.
Right. They're not paid the most at the indie scene at some of these local promotions. It's like you're I always like to say you're earning a lot of skills that you're not going to be able to get without the practice or your flight. You're earning your flight time is what I'm trying to think
paying
about.
your dues.
Paying your dues is a better way of saying it. Geez, been out it so long not seeing this show. You learn to forget the lingo.
Oh, dude. Lord, I'm like, man, can I go to bingo and just announce the numbers?
While we're on that, how have you been able to work on your chops with the lack of shows going on for obvious reasons?
Well, I haven't for the most part. A few shows have opened up. I've reached out to them and they've used me. I did a little bit of ring announcing for Go Wrestle. Yesterday I did some announcing for Champ 7 Pro Wrestling out of Jacksonville. So, that has been able to help me shake the dust off. But prior to that, when COVID happened, like everyone else, my gigs dried up.
So you're in the frustration point of what's the next step and waiting for people to make decisions that are above your pay grade.
Well, yeah, and it's frustrating because, anyone in this business right now, because, this horrible things happen to all of us.
Right.
And, it's nothing that you can fix on your own. If it's just an aspect of your performance or whatnot, you can go back to drawing board and change it up. But with COVID, who would have expected this?
Yeah. Let me take you in a little time machine here. What was your first ring announcer job, and how did it go?
So actually my first ring announcing job wasn't even professional wrestling. My college, Florida Gateway College, they started a basketball team back, and so they brought me on to be the PA announcer. Being a PA announcer is similar to being a ring announcer. You introduce both teams, you shout out when they score and all that. But the athletic director hands me a sheet, and I will never forget what it said. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand and remove your head garments for the playing of our national anthem. So I've got jitters. This is my first game.
Right.
And I say, ladies and gentlemen, please stand and remove your garments for the playing of our national anthem. Corrected myself real quick, but yeah, that was
a few
pretty,
chuckles from the audience.
Yeah, a few chuckles from the audience, but yeah. After that, it went pretty good.
That was the thing. How do you judge your success then? I mean, I would say it's a little bit different than a wrestler, because obviously you can learn new moves and you can get better running the ropes, and obviously with the experience and if you're putting in the time, you can, if you're taping and recording, you can tell. But how do you judge your success?
I'm very proud of what I've been able to accomplish so far. I mean, I've been able to meet wrestlers all over North Florida and South Georgia. I've worked for many different promotions. I have a home here with Spinebuster Wrestling, which I consider my home promotion. So, as far as I'm concerned, obviously, I would love to be on NXT, AEW, or every Major League Wrestling and doing their ring announcing. But, that's an end goal. In order to, have a good success rate, you need to set accomplishable goals. And the first goal I ever set for myself was to get known in the North Florida, South Georgia era. And I'm accomplishing that goal. A few people know who I am. Like I said, I've been able to work many different places. I'm getting to sit down and have an interview with you guys. I never expected that to happen.
Well, you set the bar low right there.
Oh, no. You guys do a great job. So
well, thank you.
I'm proud of what I've been able to accomplish right now, and and I'm hoping that I can just keep on getting a little bit higher after that.
Excellent. Where do you're one of the few ring announcers that I know. You see this a lot with managers.
Right.
I would say garish, and I mean that in the most positive sense
right.
possible. But where do you get your ideas for your outfits from?
Well, the idea actually goes back to advertising. You want something with bright colors and all that to grab someone's attention, like a sign. So, we're going back to that sale thing. So in my mind, I'm like, well, cool, if you want to get that attention, you need to have something bright and colorful. Because you're like a traffic director in a way. You're taking their attention and you're directing it towards the wrestler. So that's like what initially gave me the idea. And I'm like, okay, well, where can I get colors? So, I would go online and I'd find a jacket that I like. And, then once you get the jacket, you kind of just tailor the rest to the jacket.
So do you have an idea in mind, or I'm looking for something that's blue or green or red, and then...
Yes, exactly. Actually, this jacket and a few other jackets that you've seen me wear are given to me by my jacket sponsor, Cofandy.net. So they'll have they had a few over the past, last year, that, they were wanting somebody to wear, so I ate them all up, and I said, hey, I'd love to wear that jacket. So, they'd send me the jacket, and, in return, I write a review about it and mention and name drop their names when I can. So, that's where I've gotten most of my jackets from. Okay,
and then once you have the jacket, then you build it from there?
Yeah, everything else, everything else just kind of falls into place after that.
I do appreciate, I'm just going to make this statement, it drives me crazy as somebody who's has a pretty good sock game. I'll just state that boldly. But when you see a ring announcer get in there and they're dressed up, but they're wearing just white socks with tennis shoes or something like that, I'm like, if you're going to do it, commit to the gimmick.
Yeah, that is a pet peeve of mine. For me, a ring announcer should be the best dressed man in the building, and that's hard to do when the notorious Johnny Maverick is the general manager.
Best dressed general manager in South Georgia, North Florida.
Yes, that is very hard to do, because that man outshines me. But you should still strive to be the best dressed man in the room.
Well, you have the bar with Spinebuster.
Yes.
And that's what you try to go. To wrap things out, the final question: who is on your Mount Rushmore of ring announcers?
Well, if we're talking ring announcers across the whole spectrum, it would be Michael Buffer, Bruce Buffer, Sammy Lennon Jr., who a lot of people sometimes don't think about, and of course Howard Finkel. Those would be my Mount Rushmore of ring announcers.
Excellent. where can people find you online? What's your social media game?
You can find me on Instagram at Ringside Pitchman, or you can find me on Twitter at Donnie Harris Jr. I'm also on Facebook. I mean, just give me a follow. I always follow back.
We want to thank Donnie Harris Jr., ring announcer, best dressed ring announcer.
Thank you.
South Georgia, North Florida. We want to expand that more. Leave your comments below. Check us out on, I was going to give my own personal site. We're on Professors of Wrestling. Check us out. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. And we've got a Podbean, so we post up these interviews on there as well as the visual. So check us out, support us, let us know. We want to be a community, and we cannot do that without you, the viewer, the listener, and all that. So till next time, I'm Dave from the Professors of Wrestling.